Welcome, horror hounds, to the penultimate stop on our Blood on the Tracks trip through train-themed horror movies. Any new passengers alighting here can visit some of the old stops just by checking out my playlists. We're going to be looking at the 2004 film Creep. I've read a lot of reviews for this film that seem to take exception to the idea that there's an unlikable female protagonist as the lead. They say that it's one of the weaker aspects of the film. I'd argue it's one of the film's greatest strengths. Franka Potente is our lead, a German actress who most people will recognise from a couple of the Jason Bourne movies. In Creep, she plays a character called Kate, who works in the City of London within the fashion industry. We don't know the specifics of her job. It doesn't really matter. We meet her at a fashion industry type party, a small sort of office party filled with the city set. You kind of get the idea. She's heard a rumour that George Clooney is in London at a different venue, and she knows someone who's got VIP passes there. And basically it's her idea to go across town and seduce and screw George Clooney. This was way back when, before he was married and still had his Playboy reputation well and truly intact. So sure, she's a shallow character. All of her peers are shallow characters. She's written and designed and played that way, and I don't have an issue with that at all. She's specifically created like that to play off later on in the film, and not that much later on in the film, some of the homeless community in the city who are more rounded, more aware, more human. I have absolutely no issue with following a protagonist who is outside of the mould, especially outside of the mould of straight white 20 to 40-year-old guy, hero protagonist, and not the ass-kicking woman. People have taken how James Cameron developed the Ellen Ripley character from Alien into Aliens, and they've all too often used that as a shorthand for a well-rounded female character. We've got a character here for our film who doesn't fit the usual moulds of any of the protagonists we're used to seeing. It just so happens she's a bit of an asshole. So she makes her way to the London Underground to catch the last train across town to find and fuck Mr. Clooney. But she falls asleep and misses the last train and finds herself on a nightmare journey through the London Underground. Written and directed by Christopher Smith, who would go on to make Severance, which I haven't seen, and then Triangle, which I have and love and have reviewed on this channel a little while ago, has fully acknowledged that the inspiration for this movie came from the London Underground sequence in An American Werewolf in London. And honestly, you watch American Werewolf in London, and that film's the first and last word on many things, not least werewolf transformations. I know the Howling fans have something to say about that, but they're wrong. It's all about American Werewolf, baby. And one of the things that American Werewolf in London is the first and last word on is sort of horror movies set in the London Underground. It's a short little segment, and it does pretty much everything you need it to do. But Christopher Smith watched that and said, wow, why doesn't someone set an entire movie in the London Underground? He says this on the commentary to the DVD, unaware, having written the film, that there's a film called Deathline that exists from the 60s, which might form part of Blood on the Tracks later. I believe him. During the prep for this film, he said he went and watched Deathline and took some stuff from that and incorporated it into his script from Creep. But there's very much nods towards the London Underground segment in American Werewolf in London, and there's even a shot which is designed very specifically from the top of the escalator, the camera moving and looking down the escalator, purely designed to tip the hat to American Werewolf in London. It's possibly the greatest shot in that movie, and Smith knows it. He knows that when he puts this shot in Creep, everyone's going to be thinking about an American Werewolf in London. Let's just say yes. American Werewolf is an inspiration. Here we are, we're standing up, we're saluting an American Werewolf in London. Now, let's get on and tell our story, because Kate gets stuck in the London Underground and Christopher Smith's instincts are absolutely spot on. It is a phenomenal location to set a horror movie. If you know anything about what's beneath London, you will know that there are ghost stations, disused stations that are just still there. You know that there's the Victorian sewer system that's under there. You know that there are now defunct and disused tunnel systems that were created during World War II for the government to do its business, run the country whilst the city above was being bombed to oblivion. There is a ton of crazy old war, pre-war and Victorian shit under there to play with. Christopher Smith knows it, and that is our playground for the rest of the movie. What a phenomenal setting for a horror film. Just like the catacombs beneath Paris for the film As Above, So Below. Yes, of course. My God, yes. Set a horror movie in the catacombs of Paris. Have you seen them? It's perfect. Exactly the same goes for Beneath London. The film actually opens with a really nice little prologue. Before we get to Kate, before we get to the London Underground and the trains, a couple of sewer workers. It's a little prologue that reads almost like an urban legend. It feels familiar, yet it's introducing you to the world of Creep. There's something living in the underground and the sewer system beneath London. Just like the giant albino alligators in the sewer system of New York, Kate wakes up on a deserted subway station. She tries to get out. The whole place is locked up. Instantly, the setting is eerie. You go on the underground when it's open, and a semi-empty platform feels weird and creepy anyway. And you look this way and you look that way, and there's tunnels stretching off into absolute pitch blackness, and sounds coming from the tunnels, and wind, air getting pushed through, this sort of like artificial stale smelling air, a sort of artificial wind. And so all you do is take out everyone else and put yourself alone in there, and instantly you're creeped out. So naturally, this being a horror movie, something or someone is down there with her. The character's called Craig, but affectionately known as Creep, played by Sean Harris, that most people these days, I guess, will know as Fifield from the Ridley Scott film Prometheus. He's the guy who ignobly maps out an entire structure, that's his job, and then gets lost. Let's ignore weaknesses in Prometheus' script, and let's say that Sean Harris is a phenomenal actor, and what he does with Creep is nothing short of quite marvellous, actually, because where you've got Franca Potente making Kate unlikable, you've got Sean Harris making this deformed albino psychopath serial killer trapped and or brought up and raised in the sewers and undergrounds beneath London likable in a weird kind of way, and mainly non-verbally. He invests him with such an internal landscape. Does that make any sense? That his movements and his thought processes, and you can see the character thinking, and he's not the blank canvas of a Michael Myers where you can literally just place anything you want into this negative space. Michael Myers is essentially a negative space of character, and you have nothing really to go on. Why did he kill his family? Why is he like this? Why is he doing this now? A complete negative space. But what Sean Harris manages to do with Craig, with the creep, is invest him with an enormous internal landscape and a history and a life, to the extent where even though he's the villain of the piece, even though he's killing people, you can kind of piece together why you think he's doing it, and he becomes one of the most fascinating antagonists that you've seen in a long, long time. And pit him against our hero, our protagonist, who on the whole is unlikable, and you've got a dynamic that you really don't see very often. And regular viewers of my channel will know that I will always champion something that tries something a little different. So whilst Creep is set within a structure that's very strictly laid down by American Werewolf in London, plays completely and utterly with the conventions of horror cinema. Christopher Smith, who writes and directs it, knows what you know, and he knows what you like, and he tells you that he's going to give it to you, and he does give it to you. And some of the joy is knowing what's coming and waiting to see how it plays out. But in amongst all of that are character dynamics that you've never seen before. Yes, some of the conventions are frustrating. There are about 2 or 3 occasions when characters should just outright kill Creep, and then the movie would be over and they would be safe, rather than injuring him and running away. They're kind of also the conventions of horror cinema as well, folks. Yes, it is frustrating. I get that it's frustrating. Don't run away. Stomp his head into mush. Then you'll be safe. But yeah, then the movie will be over, and it's only been 50 minutes, and then we won't get that really fucking cool ending. And then we won't get the really eerie thing of just returning to daytime and normality with just a couple of people silently joining the platform waiting for the first train of the day. So, whilst it's not short of cliche, whilst it's not short of genre stereotype, it plays with them. It's aware of them. So in the same way it stands up and salutes American Werewolf in London right off the bat, you're with someone who understands this genre of movie. And I would suggest Creep, if you have not seen it, is well worth your time. I mentioned it towards the start of this. We've got one more stop for the Blood on the Tracks mini-series, and it is, and I'd always planned this to be the last one because I wanted to end on a high in case some of these movies, and they have been, were rubbish. It's Deathline, known in the US as Raw Meat. Only with fucking Donald Pleasance